Earlier today, you said to Senator Kennedy that President Trump never demanded you to cut interest rates in your job interview. Is that your sworn testimony?
That is, Senator.
Okay. Well, someone here is lying then.
Someone here is lying. That's not a cable news headline. That's not a pundit's hot take. That is a United States senator saying that directly on the record in a federal confirmation hearing to a man who was sitting under sworn testimony. And what you just watched is the moment this entire hearing changed. Kevin Walsh, Trump's chosen nominee to lead the Federal Reserve, one of the most powerful economic positions in the world, the person who will set interest rates for the entire United States economy. That man was just told to his face in front of the full committee that either he or the President of the United States is lying. Not there seems to be a discrepancy. Not we'd like some clarification. Someone here is lying. Full stop. Now let's slow this down, because the setup matters. Walsh had already testified earlier in the hearing to Senator Kennedy that Trump never demanded he commit to cutting interest rates during the job interview process. That was his position. That was his sworn statement. Trump didn't ask. It never happened. And then this senator came back with a piece of paper. A Wall Street Journal article, December 12th, in which Trump himself, the president, the man who picked Walsh, confirmed to reporters that during a 45-minute meeting at the White House, he pressed Walsh on whether he could be trusted to support interest rate cuts. Trump said it to one of the most respected financial newspapers in the world, on the record. And it directly contradicts what Walsh just swore to under oath. So now the senator reads it back out loud in the hearing room and enters it into the congressional record. And here is where it gets interesting, because Walsh's response wasn't "that's not accurate." It wasn't "I'd like to see the full context of that article." His response was to attack the journalists. He said, and this is almost unbelievable, that the reporters from the Wall Street Journal either need better sources or better journalistic standards. The Wall Street Journal, the paper Trump chose to give that interview to, the paper that quoted Trump directly. Walsh's defense is that those reporters got it wrong. And the senator wasn't having any of it.
Because it's either you or President Trump. Because in an interview with the Wall Street Journal of December 12th, President Trump confirmed that he pressed you on your commitment to support interest rates cuts. And I quote, "During a 45-minute meeting with Walsh on Wednesday at the White House, the president pressed Walsh on whether he could trust him to support interest rate cuts if he were chosen to lead the central bank. According to people familiar with the meeting, Trump in the general interview confirmed that, repeating, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to enter for the record the Wall Street Journal article, December 12th. Trump says he's leaning towards Walsh or has it to lead the Fed." So, this brings up an issue of credibility at this point. Who's lying here? Is it you or the president? Because the president confirmed that he did ask you to cut interest rates.
Senator, there's, of course, a third alternative. You cite a couple of reporters for a leading financial newspaper. I recall reading that story at the time.
Did you issue a correction?
I think those reporters either need better sources or better journalist standards.
Did you ask for a correction?
There are things in the newspaper, Senator, I see all the time that don't strike my ear as correct.
So it is, in your opinion, that the president then is lying when he said he did not ask you?
I can only repeat to you, Senator, what I said to several of your colleagues.
So you did not. You right now, under sworn testimony, are saying just to right now that the president of the United States in that job interview did not ask you to cut interest rates.
The president never asked me to commit to interest rate cuts at any particular meeting over the period of my tenure at the Fed. He didn't ask for it. He didn't demand it. He didn't require it, and nor would I have ever done so.
So if these reporters come back and say, do another follow-up on this, and they confirm what they heard, what will your response be?
Well, my response would be what I suggested to you a few moments ago. as I read that story in real time, I remember thinking they either need better journalistic standards or better sources.
So, here's my problem, Mr. Chair and colleagues. And Mr. Walsh, I think you're incredibly qualified. But a lot of us are actually worried about the integrity of the Federal Reserve. We're worried about what this means for the economic markets, and we're worried about what this means for inflation. We're worried about your independence, and now we're hearing direct contradictions whether or not you were directly asked by the president to cut interest rates, and you're saying no, and he's saying yes. And I think for a lot of us, there's a question now of credibility. And I think there's a real reason why many of us are not voting no. As a matter of fact, until you verbally spoke to Mr. Kennedy and answered his question that he did not the president did not ask you to cut interest rates, this was not even going to be brought up. So there's definitely right now a true question about who is lying here. It's either you or it's the president. I yield back.
Walsh said he didn't ask for it. He didn't demand it. He didn't require it. 3 times. 3 denials. Under oath. And Trump said to the Wall Street Journal that he did. Now Walsh offered what he called a third alternative. He said maybe the reporters just got it wrong. But think about what that argument actually requires you to believe. It requires you to believe that the Wall Street Journal published a story claiming Trump pressed his Fed nominee on interest rates, and Trump, upon reading it, didn't issue a single correction, didn't call it fake news, didn't send a Truth Social post, didn't have his press secretary deny it, nothing. Because if Trump had denied that story when it was published, Walsh would have had his answer ready. He would have said, and the president denied that report at the time. But he didn't say that. Because Trump didn't deny it. Trump let that story stand. And that silence is damning. This is also, and this cannot be understated, happening in a confirmation hearing for the Federal Reserve. Not a congressional hearing about a political scandal. Not a debate about foreign policy. This is the hearing to confirm the next person to control American monetary policy. Interest rates, inflation, the cost of your mortgage, the cost of your car loan, the financial backbone of the entire country. And right now, the nominee's credibility is in free fall. Because either he walked into this hearing and lied under oath about what happened in his job interview with the president, or the president lied to the Wall Street Journal about what he asked in that interview. There is no version of events where both of them are telling the truth. The senator made that crystal clear. She said it plainly. We're worried about your independence. That's the real issue underneath all of this, not just the contradiction, not just the who's lying drama. The deeper fear, the one that was already circulating before Walsh sat down in that chair, is whether the Federal Reserve under Walsh would operate as an independent institution, or whether it would operate as an extension of the White House, cutting rates when Trump needs a political win, regardless of what the economy actually requires. And Walsh's answer to that fear was to get caught in a contradiction with the president before the hearing was even over. Watch what happened in the final moments of that exchange. The senator said something that stopped the room. She said, until you verbally spoke to Mr. Kennedy and answered his question, this wasn't even going to be brought up. Think about that. The credibility bomb Walsh just stepped on, he detonated it himself with his own testimony. If he had simply not answered Kennedy's question the way he did, or answered it differently, this entire confrontation never happens. The SJA article stays in the background. Nobody reads it into the record. But Walsh said what he said. And then the senator read back what Trump said. And now it's in the congressional record forever. Here's the bottom line. Kevin Walsh sat before the United States Senate under sworn testimony and stated 3 times emphatically that the President of the United States never asked him to commit to cutting interest rates. Trump told the Wall Street Journal he did. Both statements cannot be true. Walsh's response was not to provide documentation, not to produce a witness, not to offer any evidence that the Wall Street Journal got it wrong. His response was to suggest that one of the world's most respected financial newspapers hired reporters with bad sources and low standards, a newspaper Trump himself chose to give that interview to. And Trump never corrected that story. The senator called it what it is: a credibility question, a direct contradiction, and a serious reason for her and several of her colleagues to vote no. Whether Walsh gets confirmed or not, this exchange doesn't disappear. It's in the record. It will be referenced every single time Walsh makes a rate decision, every time the Fed moves independently of what Trump wants, every time someone asks, can we trust this institution? Because the man they're being asked to trust just got caught between his sworn testimony and the president who hired him. And one of them is lying. If you want to understand what's actually happening to American institutions right now, not the spin, not the talking points, the actual receipts, subscribe and hit the bell. This was one hearing. There are more coming. And we'll be here for every single one. Drop a comment. Do you think Walsh lied or did Trump? Because based on what we just saw, somebody did.